In the most anticipated Nuggets season in history, the Nuggets began by going on the road and getting whooped by the Jazz. We're off and running. It's Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show and join folks in the chat section as we go along and talk about the Denver Nuggets loss to the Utah Jazz in the season opener on the road. Man, what a not tough, don't have tough, but what a bad one that is to start the year. Lots to talk about, only game one, but lots to talk about, lots to get into. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Adam Mares from DMVR. You can follow him on Twitter at Adam_Mares. Hope, as I told you all yesterday, that you caught the pre and post game shows over at DNVR. PrizePicks is our sponsor for today. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. All right, Adam, there's a lot of places that we can...
man. Actually, I found the best take, Matt. Neither you nor I thought about. You can't let him tank. You can't let Wemby get in the division. We got to lose every game to Utah and Oklahoma City. I like this.
Yeah, Josh says everyone, it's actually smart. They're intentionally losing to make sure the Thunder and Jazz can't tank. I love it. Great. It's galaxy brain tank. My thought process is kind of, usually it's like there's a tendency to kind of want to start with like what was positive, and then we can get to the negative. And I kind of want to go in reverse. I kind of want to go in like reverse order and just do like what was worst.
I think today warrants the reverse order,
and that way we can get better as the show goes on.
All right,
so I think there's a lot of places to kind of get here. The bench unit was horrific in that first quarter.
Yeah,
I will say
and the first 2 minutes of the second quarter.
Yeah, I will say that the game was back within reach, and they were +6 to start the fourth. Yeah. And that was with a bench lineup, including MPJ. It was bench lineup plus MPJ. And so, like, there. Now, I think
the bench was not a plus at any point in this game. If that's what you mean.
The bench, the first
they were minus 20, they were minus 18. They never outscored them by 18.
What I mean is just in the stretch.
In the stint. I got you. Yeah.
Before the starters came back in the fourth, that stint was +6.
But it was different lineups. I mean, part of this, and the only reason I'm pushing back on this, Matt, is because part of it was Jeff Green at center, and I think it was Bruce Brown at power forward. And that's a bit, to me, of a moonshot lineup. Like, I like it, but I don't know that that's an every night you're going to be able to roll out a lineup. Like, I don't think that works. That was, we're down 20. We need to do something. And it worked in that moment.
Yeah, so I think my takeaway there, honestly, if we're going to, because I think this ties into the bench problem off the bat, right? Which is, I'm of the opinion now, and I think you'll probably agree with me given various things that you said on various platforms. I'm of the opinion that Jeff Green and Davon Reed can't play together at this point.
Why is, I mean, I honestly just don't think Davon Reed's that good. And Jeff Green was pretty bad last night. But why do you think they can't? Is there a specific thing they lack?
Because they're not good enough at any one particular thing.
Yeah, that's probably
like that unit. I think needs more specialists. It needs guys that are like very good. I think Bruce Brown's fine as like a multifaceted guy, but with Jeff Green, you're kind of like, well, he's got some size and he can play three if he needs to, and like theoretically he can shoot. Now look, like Jeff Green was the worst player I think on the Nuggets last night. Like that's my position is that Jeff Green of everybody. Jeff Green was the guy that was the worst. Defense.
And that's a tough battle, but I mean, that's probably the right answer.
Like all of it, I think is pretty bad. The problem I think is that Davon needs to be like a very complimentary player, and I think you either need more creation with Ish Smith that didn't play, or you need more shooting with like more of a pure 3-and-D weapon to be able to provide better spacing. Staggering can solve some of that, which I think is like there's a lot of reasons that +6 happened in the fourth, and it's only a couple of minutes +6, but it wasn't a huge minus. So I'm trying to work with what wasn't that bad about it. This is all kind of a mechanism to say that there was a lot of problems with the bench unit last night. I think I still am not necessarily convinced that like the problem was the bench, given that how the starters closed that game, but they were also out of gas from trying to come back. So I'm trying to like balance it out. I thought the starters were bad to start. The bench made it worse to where it was a 20 plus deficit.
Yeah, the starters, that first stretch was just regular bad. Like out to win those minutes, you didn't. But it's a game.
Yeah. Yeah. And
by the time they checked back in, it was no longer a game.
Yeah, and it was no longer a game. But they also they never really put together a stretch to get it. Like I guess the third quarter they did make a little bit of a push to pull back within where they needed to get to.
One caveat though, it didn't happen with Murray. It happened when Murray came out, so that's part of it. That's why like the bench to me, you're right, is the worst one, but it's almost not even the biggest story. It's just it was maybe the biggest issue, but not the biggest story.
So I would assume like the big story here, and you kind of hit this on the DMVR show, is that like Jamal Murray's return was pretty rough. Yes?
I think, but it was also to be expected. This is the thing. It was rough, but it was also, I'm surprised he played 26 minutes, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Missing the preseason after missing 550 games, you just kind of knew that there was going to be some, everybody else fit into this. And I just felt like it wasn't, and I'm not trying to put this on Murray. Again, he played the way I expected him to. But I thought that the rest of the team lost the rhythm and almost played passive or played like it just played strange trying to play around him. Not at all like what we had seen the last two games of the preseason that gave us so much hope coming into the season.
One of the things I thought was interesting from a Jamal standpoint is I looked up some numbers last night on Spectrum and was looking at it. Just did not run a lot of pick and roll. Like they just didn't run it. They had a very low number of pick and roll last night in terms of like sets for the game, which I was like, that's interesting because if you're struggling and you're trying to get back into a game, going to like bread and butter, all right, let's just run some pick and roll and kind of work this team that is a little bit less talented than us. I would think that would be a pretty good way to do it, right? But for whatever reason, like they just didn't run it a lot, and I wonder how much of that does have to do with Jamal getting back into the flow of things and them trying to figure like it is very apparent that Jamal's coming back to an entirely different team that has and one that yes, there are new components here, but the team's also played very differently for the past year and a half.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was kind of apparent to me that they like
I agree.
there was not enough structure in the offense in terms of knowing how everybody was going to fit together. And that was interesting to me from where they're going to be in the early parts of the season offensively.
One of the things we debated last night, Matt, and I'm curious your take. Do you feel like, I mean, because again, I'm just blown away by the 26 minutes part. Do you feel like, hey, you just got to do it? Like it's going to be ugly and it's going to be a grind. It's going to be hard, and you need to get better defensively so you can make up for those things to get over this hump? Or do you feel like it's more of a, hey, maybe ease him in is going to be the best point? Like, how would you handle that? And from a minute standpoint and just like how you're playing.
I think the minutes were probably related to not wanting to start off the season with a loss. It's the opener, so we can play a little bit more, right? It's like his first game.
But in a weird way, I'm watching that first half and going, the loss is more likely with more minutes. I mean, I'm not trying to be tough on Jamal. It's just it's a fact. He didn't play the preseason.
Yeah, I would say you just deal with it because I think once it clicks, it'll just kind of click a little bit. It'll just click a little bit better, right? And they ran into hot shooting and they played defense like garbage. And if those two things are not the same, then Jamal can struggle a little bit because Jamal did do some good things. And from a shot making perspective, like there were some looks he got that were just like, okay, they didn't have that last year. And so, I didn't necessarily pinpoint a lot of possessions where like Jamal was the problem on defense. And if we're being real here, like defense was the reason they lost. Now their offense was also
100%,
bad.
100%.
Like, but the offense was bad too. Like I think on cleaning the glass in non-garbage time, they had a 100 offensive rating. Like that for a team that we were talking about being the best offense of all time. Long way to go. The mountain is steep from this point. Rebounding, obviously, another key area here. Jay mentions it. We let the Jazz get 11 offensive rebounds. We're better than that. Walker Kessler just hustled his face, and Vando. Walker Kessler and Vando just brought it. Like they were really great. The bounces went their way in terms of the random tap ups. I'll say like rebounding's one. I don't want to put a lot on Jokic in the game in general. There's one area we'll talk about later that's more of a broader issue. But in terms of like performance, like Joker's Joker, right? Like scored, did the thing, like looked good in general. But I didn't think necessarily he was. It wasn't necessarily that he wasn't locked in. It felt more like he was in a very rare instance, kind of a half step behind, right? Like he would turn one way and the ball would go right behind him, and then he would turn around. Like small instances of him just not being in the position, and then like guys were just. I mean, again, Walker Kessler and Vando were just absolutely skying and playing really hard to get those offensive rebounds last night in the Jazz home opener.
Which player are you saying was responsible for that?
Jokic.
Oh, okay. That's a larger segment. We should take a break and do this into the other segment because for me this is a bigger thing. But the one caveat I'll say is, 3-point shooting and offensive rebounding are correlated. In particular, the spacing. And the Utah Jazz did a very good job of stretching Denver out, getting into the paint, kicking out, and then making a bunch of them, and then rebounding the ones they didn't. So to me, that was a bigger part of it, but that also comes back to Jokic in certain ways.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about the loss and where it came from and what to do about it on Locked On Nuggets. I want to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. I had a rough night last night. It could have been worse, but I had
only one you hit was Nuggets.
No, I had Knicks too. I had Knicks, but my over-unders, I can never get the totals right. I bet totals and have strong takes, and then I'm just wrong on them. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf, is to go to BetOnline. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Second segment here on Locked On Nuggets, recapping the first Nuggets game of the season, and what a downer it was for Nuggets fans. Just a real bummer of a game. All right, so what was the point you kind of wanted to get to about Jokic as far as the rebounding goes?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that went on here, in this game. So pinpointing like any one thing and saying it was the reason, it isn't right. But one of the things that definitely happened in this game was that, Denver's playing up at the level of these screens for a lot of it. And, that means you need a lot of backside rotations. You need the containment and you need to scramble. And Denver just got sliced up. Is that because it's game one? Is it because, defenses aren't going to be tight end? I think so. But it's concerning to me. Utah, I was impressed with the amount of just competent players, that they had out there. So David Locke has been preaching that they're not a tanking team. They're not going to tank this year. We'll see. They certainly look like a team that was going to try to play it and score. But they were getting that drive, scramble you, wide open three nonstop. And a lot of that to me is, Jokic has to be better at this. Like, I don't think you can play a ton of drop with Jokic. It's just we've seen him to say, he doesn't have the physical tools to do it. And last night I thought, and it's an extension of what I saw in Eurobasket. Again, Jokic was so great in Eurobasket for the people that missed the summer. But when Italy started going on the run, they kept putting him in pick and roll. And it was Italy. It was like Fontecchio. And, it wasn't like superstar, all-star players, caliber all-star players. But they kept bringing him out there. And I just felt like he looked defenseless. And so it's discouraging to me that you get into a game like this against not a team that you would say, hey, who are the 10 toughest teams to guard in space for Jokic and pick and roll? I would not have named the Jazz. And yet here he is really looking like really, really struggling in that way. So to me, that was the most discouraging part. Like, again, the bench, yes, that was probably a bigger reason for why they lost. But the bigger stories to me were Jamal Murray obviously is going to be I think the runway for him has to be pretty long. And then Jokic's defense and just the team's defense around him trying to step out. It looks so far from being where you would have faith in it being able to win in the playoffs.
So it's 98-90 in the fourth quarter. After the bench run, Jokic comes in. Conley comes off a high pick and roll, and they stretch him out. And the Jazz did a really good job of not allowing the Nuggets to send defenders. Like they were hitting so many threes. There was one where KCP was like, you could tell he was like, I need to dig, but he can't because he's one pass away, and Sexton's going to hit the corner man for the three. But it's 98-90. Conley comes off of a high pick and roll from high to right side, and there's nobody to help there. There's nobody to come over from the wings, and so it's just Jokic in space, and Jokic just has to give him room, and Conley hits a wide open three. 2:15 in the fourth, there were consecutive possessions of Sexton putting Jokic on an island and hitting shots over him.
And at that point, like, those were tough, but at that point, when you're down 12, I honestly, like, Jokic was playing off of Sexton a lot. And part of me is like, yeah, that's kind of what you want. Like, you're probably going to hit the mid-range, but when you're down 12 with 3 minutes, you kind of have to force them to shoot early. And he did, and he made them. So,
well, it's funny was some of that was actually interesting. They pre-switched a little bit. They had Jokic actually guarding Sexton on some possessions, anticipating a pick and roll, and then Sexton waved it off.
That's easy to do, though. That's like that's basketball 101.
Yeah, right. I'm with you in that. And I'll just say this, like, I don't know the dynamics because I know the dynamics from a couple of years ago, right? Where I talked to people in the organization. They said Jokic said he wanted to play up. Like, he wanted to be more active, that he didn't like he wasn't comfortable.
I think it's the best option, though, man. That's the thing, is I think that's all you can hope for with him.
You just don't think that because of the offensive load, he can't play at the level anymore? It's just too draining? You just think
No, I don't think it's that. I mean, this is game one. He shouldn't have been tired. My fear, Matt, this is what I'm saying is, if you're a Jokic detractor, if you're a Jokic skeptic, you think, oh, he'll never be able to guard at any kind of level. Even if it's a good offense in the playoffs, you just stretch him out, play pick and roll, and he's not going to be up there. And I've always been against that, and I still am. But when I watch, like I said, the Eurobasket, you need to, like, hey, you're rested. You're not like you're playing a ton of minutes. You need to get stops on these guys, and they just couldn't. And then you watch against the Warriors, and they're just putting him in pick and roll, and they have a 122 offensive rating when he's on the floor. And then you watch, games like last night against the Utah Jazz, and you're thinking, man, Denver just can't do anything about this. They're giving up wide open threes or wide open rim shots. I look at that and go, I think he can be better than this. We've seen him be better at this in moments, and I'm not trying to put it all on him. Again, this is just talking about the big story, not the story for this game. It's talking about what really he did. Jamal's going to be better. Nuggets are going to be a better rotation. They're going to shoot better. They're going to rebound better. They're going to be more focused. But that part of it, to me, I'm just watching it. It's game one, and I'm thinking Mike Conley, Colin Sexton, whoever else they put in the pick and roll was absolutely carving them up with that. And I watch that and I go, it's concerning. I wanted this whole season has to be about Jokic being better at that thing, because that's the thing that if Denver's not going to be successful in the playoffs, it's going to happen there.
Yeah, I just continue to be. The idea is you have to play. There's a couple of reasons to play drop. It's easier on the big. It allows for better rim protection because otherwise the backside's completely open. I just feel like this team is better suited to scramble and make the recoveries. Like,
they are.
I think
they are. And they got to get better at that.
I think putting pressure on these teams is a better way to go about it rather than settling in and just trying to contain. I don't think this is a contain group. I think that this is very much not that. The Jazz put Michael Porter. It was interesting. The Jazz put MPJ and Jokic in pick and rolls a little bit last night to create opportunities, which was a pretty smart, not something that we'll see a lot in the regular season because teams just tend to be we're going to run 1-5 like we always do. But I thought that was interesting is that they used that not necessarily in terms of putting two bad defenders in space. I think Jokic was great last year and overall fine. It was more that because MPJ was so big, you did not have the ability to cover the space necessary because they're too big. Those guys are just bigger. And so the Jazz were using smaller, faster guys to navigate that space and create opportunities. We were talking about the defense. The other big problem for me defensively was I gotta say it, it was Bones. Sexton.
He had a horrible game.
Yeah, second quarter, or 2 minutes left in the first quarter. Bones tried to jump a screen on the corner. Colin just Sexton just rejected the screen. Like he tried to jump the screen and the guy and gave up the baseline and gone, just straight to the rim. And then after that, like once Sexton kind of identified, oh, this kid can't guard me, Sexton went at him and just muscled him. And it was really tough. Like I was on a radio roundtable yesterday, and there was this idea of like, I think Bones could be a pretty good defender was a notion that was raised. And I think in time, sure. I think right now it's a pretty big challenge with where he's at physically. Like he just has to add so much strength over the next couple of years to be able to make, because it really was just like Sexton putting a shoulder into him and bursting past him. And so that was really, really tough. I was expecting, honestly, from how the box score looked, I was expecting DeAndre Jordan to look a lot worse. I actually thought DeAndre Jordan was okay. Am I wrong?
Rebounds, right?
Yeah. Am I wrong there?
I mean, I thought he was really bad. He played 6 minutes and they got outscored in those 6 minutes by 13 points. He had 2 rebounds in that stretch, and that was a stretch where Vando was grabbing an enormous amount. Like, to me, DeAndre Jordan has one skill, rebounding. That's his elite skill.
I didn't see on rewatch. You have to tell me maybe tomorrow if you do. I couldn't identify a lot of spots where I was like, oh, he got beat for him. Like I saw Jeff get beat for him.
Well, I think I mean, here's the thing though, Matt. If you look at this, Jokic had 4 rebounds. DeAndre Jordan had 2. Those are your centers. And I think that's indicative of exactly what Utah's game plan was: draw them away and make other people rebound. Nonetheless, it's still like, if you're DeAndre Jordan, I still think that that's where you make the impact is on the glass, and it wasn't there. So to me, I don't think it's a coincidence that he played 6 minutes and then didn't play again.
Fair.
And the same goes for Davon Reed.
Maybe I need to go back and watch it again. That's fair. I mean, look, I said my going take was that DeAndre was going to be a huge negative by Christmas, and they'd have to bench him because that's been his career.
You're at minus 13, so what's huge?
Yeah, we're on the way.
Because I think Facu, like at the end of the year, was like a minus 230. So we're not that far.
I think I was optimistic on DeAndre because I said minus 54 by Christmas, and we're well on pace to go beyond that.
We're 4 games away from that. I mean, we're at this rate, we are 12 more minutes away.
DeAndre, great for the vibes, but not good for the plus minus. At least.
Well, I'll tell you this. This is the other thing. We talked about the bench a little bit, but just circling back to it, we did not see that 5-man bench unit play well in the preseason. We didn't. We saw the bench play really well when it was other versions of that. And when Malone, I asked Malone this week a thing about, hey, is this a year to stagger a little bit more? And I thought he kind of brushed it off a little bit, said that they were going to, but then everything you heard out of camp, oh, that second unit has been so good. Second unit's been so good. I'm sitting here going, I don't know, like, we'll see. And then you roll it out in this game, and it literally gets outscored by 13 points in 6 minutes. And you go, yeah, I don't think – credit, he adjusted right away. Like, that unit played one stint. It probably cost them the game, but he played it, and then he went away from it. But to me, this was – when you go back and look at some of the markers from preseason, there were things that were like very encouraging. That lineup that just crushed, that we'll probably see Friday, by the way, with Bruce Brown and Murray. Murray not playing was probably a bigger concern of like, hey, this guy hasn't played a lot. They haven't played with him. That's probably going to be clunky. And then that second unit having never looked good, but then us knowing it was going to be the default second unit, those were 2 major indicators. And I thought both of them popped up in this game in major ways.
Yeah, Tyson says, how in the hell is this bench beating the starters in practice? You asked that last night on the DNVR show, and it's a salient point. Like, everyone's like, oh, yeah, the bench has been so good, it's been beating the starters. Maybe that's more about where the starters are at right now instead of where the
I don't even think it's about where the starters are at, man. Like, here's the thing. Jokic in 3 preseason games took 3 shots, right? Or in 2 preseason games took 3 total shots. And then finally at the last game, in the second half, he started taking shots. But to me, that's the thing, and this is another one of my takeaways with Jokic. He had 27 points last night. He did turn it on. I think Jokic, especially early on, has to be MVP Jokic of the last 2 years. Sorry, Jokic. I know you wanted to be a little more like distributor and do this. I honestly think, especially if the defense is going to be vulnerable, one way you make a team stop picking you on the pick and roll is you force them adjust to the other side. And I think Jokic has to, where he was after the first quarter, where he got more aggressive. I just think this team, until Murray gets settled, you have to be option 1 and 2. Yes, you have to facilitate 2, but you have to put the onus on the other team to adjust because, it's kind of not his MO, but to me, he's capable of doing it, and I just think that has to start there. And I'm guessing, I didn't get to see all of this, but when you hear, oh, first team didn't, they lost this or that. Jokic score on DeAndre Jordan whenever he wants. probably wasn't doing that a whole lot in practice. And this is why I think those things are important. You got to do those things. You got to play the way in practice that your team's going to need you to play in the games. And that's why this game to me felt like this team doesn't know what their identity is yet because they haven't quite played the way they're supposed to. They're trying to figure other things out.
Yeah, they're trying to run the idealized system of it when they don't have that chemistry or the physical stuff on as far as Jamal goes yet. I think it's a great point of that. And you can kind of tell that in part because there weren't a ton of post ups for Joker. It was a lot of like pinch post, it was a lot of motion action. Like trying to get everybody involved, which is like an idealized version. And this leads me into what I want to talk about in the third segment, which is coaching and some uncomfortable truths that I feel like even after game one, I want to.
This guy in the comments here is saying, why are you talking about PNR defense? Utah had more offensive rebounds. Do you not see how these things are correlated? When you get stretched out and pick and roll, beat to the paint, kicked out to the three, you're giving up offensive rebounds. This is what I'm saying. This is why earlier I said are correlated, and they are. You can look at this statistically; they're correlated. When you get this is why, and actually, Matt, there's an interesting point to be made about Denver. Denver has been the best or one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the NBA for most of Jokic's career, except for last season, and then in the preseason and even last night, that was not the case. But also getting 3-point shots up, Denver didn't have a lot of attempts last night. They also didn't have a ton of offensive rebounds. These things are correlated. You have to be able to make teams scramble and stretch out. And Denver has been great at that for a long time. For some reason, over the last year, they lost that, and that's a problem. So pick and roll defense and being able to stretch a team out directly correlates to offensive rebounds. Some of it's effort, but not all of it's this effort.
I'll also say this. Like, again, I have to go back and watch every single offensive rebound. A lot of the rebounds that I watched last night and made notes of were not putbacks. It was an offensive rebound where they got another chance to run action again.
Yep.
And those still count. Those still track as second chance points.
Yep.
Like, it's not just putbacks, but the Jazz were very much like, no, we'll just run stuff at them again because they knew they could get what they wanted. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about coaching when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us on a Thursday. We're glad to have you with us, even after the Nuggets had a rough loss. The chat section is not coolly and calmly reacting to game one of the 2023 season. A lot of trade this guy, bench this person, all these types of things.
I mean, this is the NBA, though. Like, it's funny going through, if you look at the other teams, because there weren't a lot, like Denver, and I guess you could say Brooklyn, were the only teams that had high expectations that lost last night. So it's a little bit tough to say this, but early season, you can't read too much in. Like, you got to give this 5 games before you start to say, okay, I see the trends. Yeah. Last night, I mean, you predicted it going into Utah. By the way, like I said, Utah, and just checking out David Locke and some of his takes, he's so adamant that this is not a team that's just trying to lose every game. And they have players that are competent. So it wasn't, I mean, Denver needed to win that game. What are they now? 1-12 in their last 13 at Utah. It's always a tough place to play, but they're not the worst team in the NBA.
I haven't talked about it, and I'm not because I genuinely taking victory laps has become really annoying to me in general and on social media, so I'm trying to avoid it. I want to be very clear,
especially when they're the motions.
Well, I want to be very clear on this. I didn't say the Jazz are going to win this game. I made a wager based off of the probability that the Jazz would win this game. That's entirely different.
Good value to say that Denver will not look great out of the gate. Good value.
Denver will not look great out of the gate, and it's the Jazz home opener. Home openers are rock solid, unless you're the San Antonio Spurs, who I also bet on because they were in their home opener and got annihilated by the Charlotte Hornets.
Although I will say this, arena not full. Which is weird. Utah usually has a packed every night, sold out. So it was weird to see them.
I think part of it is that that fan base has seen the team for long enough. They're like, okay, we know what you're doing. It's okay. We'll come back. We'll come back when you're ready. But yeah, a bunch of guys. Part of this too is those guys are still playing for their careers.
Yeah, it's true.
Laurie Morgan, especially Jared Vanderbilt. Jared Vanderbilt got tossed off, just tossed aside by the Wolves for the Rudy Gobert deal. And there's just nobody talks about him. And Vando's got a lot of limitations, but Vando's a helpful NBA player in some aspects. he was last night.
Well, Calvin Booth has talked a lot. When he's spoken, he's talked a lot about sometimes you just need guys that do stuff. Like, you don't look at their skills, you just say, do they do stuff? And Jared Vanderbilt is an ultimate just does stuff guy. Like, what's his skill set? He just hustles more, and some nights grab 11 rebounds in one half. And I think this is one of my issues with Davon Reed. And you could say Jeff Green too, although I think Jeff Green is a skilled player. Like, he has value. He doesn't always have the highest motor or like the most dog in him or whatever you want to say. But a guy like Davon Reed to me is a guy that doesn't do stuff. And that's what frustrates me. Does he hit shots sometimes? Yes. But is he a guy that he had an off night? But, he had those 8 rebounds out of nowhere. I just never feel that way about Davon Reed. And that's part of my frustration.
You're like an early adopter of technology that then gets into the actual components of trying to use it from a functional standpoint day to day. And you're like, it's not great. That's how you are with Davon. You were high on him initially. And then you kind of realize
you love the tools, right? 7'2" wingspan or whatever. You're like, okay, this could be something else, but you gotta, if you're that type of player, you just need to make something. And by the way, it's why I'm a little bit higher on Christian Braun. And I know it's not like, this is the thing. It's not like there's an obvious better option. I just think it's that Christian Braun is a hustler. And you might as well put a hustler on the court, because I think even in the summer league when he was playing horrible, he still had 7 rebounds, 3 steals. He just had things that happened that you're like, okay, at least he makes something out of nothing every now and then.
So typically I'm the defend the veterans guy. Davon Reed's not a veteran.
He's not, though. That's the thing. That's what's weird about it. He's not a veteran.
There's no reason. Davon didn't help him in the playoff run. There's no lot. And the other thing I'll say is all the stuff that I typically tend to defend Malone on in terms of what the thinking is, the stakes are too high this year.
Yeah.
The stakes are too high. You don't have margin. Why is Ignaji getting DMPs?
I mean, he's the tough one here, because as much as he couldn't have been worse last night, there's no way he would have been worse than that. But I also feel like he's a guy you need rebounding. He would have provided some defense, and maybe he's some spark. Jared Vanderbilt just does it because he's young and hungry and wants to make a name for himself. And maybe you just needed a little bit of that. We'll see. Do you think Michael Malone makes a major change? I don't expect Jamal Murray to play Friday. Do you?
I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know if they looked at the schedule and we're just I think a lot of it depends on how Jamal feels today. Right? First NBA game. If he feels fine, he might be I want to play him. But there's a couple of the schedule makers just screwed them so badly with this. Part of me is he needs to play in Golden State so he can get past it, because that's the last place that he got hurt and he didn't play in the preseason game. So he honestly, there's a mental side where I'm he needs to get past that. Now it's okay, he can get past it later because he's got to play in the home opener. Yeah. Right. And you don't want him playing a back-to-back 5 games into his return. Is it, but I'm assuming that, but I don't know. Is it more fine because he's got more energy and you want to avoid back-to-backs in the middle? I don't know. I kind of lean towards he shouldn't play and they won't, but I don't know.
You got to play him on the home opener, man. You got to give your fans the reward. But at the same time, it's just tough. Anyway, I say all that to say Denver's a different team. And weirdly, at this very moment, if you told me, are they more likely to win one way or the other right now? Again, this is not a critique of Jamal. This is a critique of not playing for 550 days and then unfortunately missing the preseason. That's what it is. But if you told me they had a better chance of winning with or without him right now, I would say probably without him. And that'll probably be the case. Jokic joked at practice the other day, man. I'm sure you saw the video where he said well, I just know Jamal's going to be terrible for 20 games. And he kind of laughed. He kind of smirks. But I think he was also smirking. He's like, guys, I'm seeing him. He's going to be horrible.
You guys everybody was like, oh, what a funny guy. And I was like, is he joking?
The thing is, it's Jokic likes to tell the real joke. He always makes fun of people, his teammates, but they're for the real thing. But also with love. He's not. We all know he loves Jamal.
It's not critical. Yeah.
But I want to know this question from you, though, Matt. He says, somebody in the comment says, does Matt also want to see Ish Smith in the bench? Do you think that is a quick fix? Ish with Bones, by the way, I think was the question somebody had raised.
I'm going to look at it more holistically.
Here it is.
I'm going to look at it more holistically. So let's go back to what we talked about at the beginning, which is I'm of the belief that Jeff Green and Davon Reed can't play together. and that combination just may not work together, much the way the Dos Verdes didn't work last year. You can add Ish Smith, because they went to 4 guards for that stretch in the fourth quarter, and that worked. You can add another creator in Ish Smith, or you can add, I don't know if Christian Braun is a good enough shooter at this point in his career.
That's a tough spot, yeah.
Yeah. Like, if Christian Braun were what they want him to be in 2 years, then it would just be obvious. Like, just play Christian Braun, right? Maybe, honestly, hey, it's Zeke wants to play 3. Maybe just let Zeke play 3.
He doesn't want to play 3. He wants to play 4.
Okay. Then you could still probably play like a combo, like MPJ and Zeke, and just do like you do with Aaron, right? Where it's like they're both 3 and they're both 4.
Yeah.
But you can change that line in that regard. What I don't think you can do, like, I'm 100% with you on this, is the Bones Highland, Bruce Brown, Davon Reed, Jeff Green, DeAndre Jordan lineup does not work. Like, it's I can't. Here's the bigger problem. We're 1 game in. It's like, how can you say that? I can't. At least I can't. I can't see a way it would work.
That's the thing about it, is you don't want to be too reactionary, but you're also looking at it and going, what is the right? Like, what does this look like when it's perfect?
Yeah, and like, honestly, this is gonna sound crazy. An Ish Smith, Bruce Brown pick and roll probably works. It probably causes.
They just switch it. No, they just
what?
The teams just switch that. No,
Bruce is slipping. If they switch it, Bruce is slipping, and Ish is finding him. And then if you've got enough space,
I don't know if I agree with that one.
But here's the key, right? Like, you need Zeke out there because you're gonna have to space him out to 5, because otherwise DeAndre is just there and the shot gets blocked at the rim. So,
yeah, that second unit's a tough one. We'll see. I mean, honestly, this is one of those games where it's game 1. This is the problem with talk radio and with daily podcasts, is that you have to react to every game, and it will feel hot. Like, I know a lot of people are like, you guys are overreacting. No, we're literally reacting. We are reacting to what happened. And then the next game comes, and we're going to react to that. These aren't proclamations about Denver's title chances, or, oh, I have to take the under now. I said over yesterday, but under now. It's not that. It's, hey, we saw a team play a real game, and here are the issues with that team, and here's how, what they're going to have to do to solve them. And with the Murray one, it's just, look, Jokic wasn't joking. It's going to take a while for him to be back to normal. And that affects the way you make rotations. That affects everything else. The defense didn't look good. There's concerns about why it's not. Did my mic come out? It sure did.
Oh, you're good. You sound good.
All right. So anyway, that's it. It's just reacting to this. Like, the Nuggets, I think, are still going to be fine. But I do think when you look at that early, we looked at 10 games and thought, what could they go? Probably going to be it might be 1 or 2 under of what we expected from the first 10 games. Namely, because they already lost one that you kind of hoped they would win.
Yeah.
So they're already starting from a point behind.
I want to talk about coaching. Malone did make the adjustments, right? Like, he didn't go back to that lineup. I'll just say this. The team didn't look prepared or focused in. The starters definitely looked like they thought that they bought the hype a little bit. That was my vibe, was the starters kind of felt like, all right, let's go. Let's have some fun. And the Jazz were like, we're going to kill you. And that difference is there. And as much as, like, there was some good defense, like Ryan was tweeting about, like, effort, stuff like that. I will say preparedness and being ready to play is a primary, like, as much as I think it's right that these are professional athletes and they got to be ready to play, there is a setting the tone thing that does fall under the coach's purview, and that failed in game 1. Like, I'm just being real, that's an area where I do blame him. The other thing I will say is, after preseason, it's not just game 1, it's preseason game 1, I'm concerned about the assistants. I had concerns about them coming in. I don't find the offense to be like, it's not. There was a couple of sequences where it was like, oh, that was really smart, and they created good stuff. Like, there was a slip for Michael Porter where the defense just completely screwed up. But at least, like,
they run the same stuff, though, man. Like, the offensive system to me is like, it's just the same stuff. And I don't know that that's necessarily bad. It's like, can you run it? I mean, you need to run it a little bit better. But I'm content to say, I think the Nuggets offense is going to be fine over time.
Yeah, no, it's not that I'm concerned about the offense. It's just, there was nothing that was brought to the table last night from a coaching standpoint that provided an edge for that team. Maybe that's like the best way to put it, right? And it's like, if we're talking about championship aspirations, margins matter. Now, right now, we're talking about win a game, right? We can worry about the championship later. Win a game first. But I will just say, like, between the defensive drop coverage change that has existed since Wes Unseld left and a lack of innovation offensively relative to what they've always kind of run, I do not feel that coaching is giving them an edge off the bat. And, Malone's effort has always been a little bit more about the big picture, right? Like, Malone's impact has always been better seen if you look at the big picture. It's like, well, they always go over their win total. Well, they have missed every year except last year. Like, all these types of look at the internal growth. All these big picture things are the best way to kind of judge Michael Malone rather than the game by game. But again, we're into the margins here. The margins matter. You lost a division game versus a team that will finish under 500. That's like, by every definition that I go through, that's a bad loss. And so it's like, look, it's game one, right? But it also, like, hey, guess what? If you wind up tied with the Minnesota Timberwolves in the division and you split 2-2 with them, and the tiebreaker is division, that is his division record, that could be the difference. Like,
when you reach this level, the pressure gets to everybody. And I think I'm saying it arrives for everyone. Like, the stakes should be high for all of these guys, players and coaching staff, front office, ownership. Like, you get to this level, it's, hey, now you're either going to do it, proof of concept, or not. And so for Malone, that does mean that, hey, your team, you preach defense all this time, said we don't have defensive players, you have them now, and you gave up 123 to the Jazz on opening night. Not good early return. So now the pressure does go. If at some point you have to say, hey, this is my team, this is the culture I set, and I just got outworked by guys that I didn't play, by the way, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, those were guys I was given and I didn't play, and they're outworking my team, on basic stuff. So the pressure does arrive for those guys. And the last one I'll say, people have to understand, guys, I flew to Serbia this summer. This is how much I believe and like Jokic. But it also comes for Jokic at this time when I say he has to be a culture setter in that way as well. There are superstars of the past and present who don't allow their teams to get out rebounded like that. Because when it happens, they know, hey, I don't allow this stuff on my team. This is my team, and I don't allow that stuff. And Jokic last night, I don't think, had that presence and had that energy. He played great once he turned it on, especially on offense. But to me, this is part of it. Like, and I know it's not perfectly within his personality, but I do think there's something too. Like, this is a year for Jokic to say, we're not doing that. Not on my team. Like, if you're on my team, we're not coming out and getting out rebounded 27 to 11.5.
Yep. Okay, let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Season's underway.
In all seriousness, though, Matt, like, it's funny. The game was as bad as it could have been in a lot of ways without an injury. It was as bad as it could have been. And I still kind of enjoy being back. Like, it's still fun to talk about these things. Yeah. Like, even when they're bad, it's still like, at least we're talking about that and not talking about, hypotheticals and this or that. It's just fun to be analyzing basketball again.
I agree. The good news is the Denver Nuggets get to right themselves in their next game when they take on, checks notes, the Golden State Warriors at home. So we'll see how that one goes.
I'll bet they'll be more focused on national television. I'll bet they'll try to not get embarrassed.
We'll talk about that tomorrow when we preview Game 2 of the Denver Nuggets season versus the Warriors. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Make sure to hit the rate, review, and subscribe. Make sure to give us those 5-star reviews. I've been very good. I've been not an obnoxious asshole like usual. So you should give us those 5-star reviews. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a great day.